It is no secret that we live in a society that heavily correlates alcohol and sex. But why? Where does this seemingly unquestioned belief come from? How come so many people believe it? In my project, I attempt to deconstruct our reality to explain how this belief becomes reincarnated generation after generation, regardless of how polarly opposite those generations might be from one another. The first step we must take in understanding how this reality has been created is looking at the alcohol advertisements we see thrown in our faces time and time again. If you look at any alcohol advertisement, chances are you're going to be pitched the underlying message of, hey, drink our alcohol and all the girls you could ever dream of will come flocking to you. There are even brands who have built themselves up on this exact premise. Just look at Dos Equis and the infamous quote-unquote most interesting man in the world. The message here could not be more clear. It equates drinking alcohol to being sophisticated, smooth, and irresistible to women. Even the language we use to describe drinking and having sex is incredibly similar. It's common to refer to being intoxicated from alcohol consumption as being hammered, just as it's common to refer to having sex with someone as nailing or screwing them. Even the word fuck is equally applicable to both concepts. You didn't have sex with someone, you fucked them. Just like you didn't get drunk last night, you got fucked up. But where does this all come from? Alcohol and sex have exactly nothing to do with each other. In fact, if you drink enough, alcohol physically prevents you from having sex. So where does this deeply ingrained correlation come from? To understand this concept better, we must turn to the theorist John Baudrillard and his concept of the simulacra. The word simulacra is Latin and essentially just means copying something. In his book, Simulation and Simulacra, he argues that the copies end up turning into their own reality, which becomes the hyper-real reality. For example, there are famous religious depictions of God, the Virgin Mary, and countless other figures, who people pray directly to. Baudrillard would argue that the people are praying to the hyper-real, directly to the copies, as opposed to what the copies are of, in this case, God. So, how does this all relate to our correlation between sex and alcohol? Well, Baudrillard would argue that this has occurred in 4 stages. The first stage would be when the faithful copies were made and we believed that they accurately reflected the product. The second stage is when the copies started to become unfaithful and perverse our reality. The third stage is when the original, profound reality becomes absent and all we are left with is the perverse reality, the hyper-reality, if you will, which brings us to the fourth and final stage, where the original reality, in this case, alcohol and sex having no correlation, no longer exists, and all we are left with is a hyper-reality, where the two are inseparable. In his book, Baudrillard argues that a direct result of this hyper-reality we live in is that the lines have been blurred between products that are needed to survive and products for which a need is created. We need water to survive. We need food. We need shelter. And yet, recent studies show that college students, a notoriously financially limited group of individuals, spend an average of $900 a year on alcohol, over double what they spend on textbooks. Baudrillard would argue that this comes from an artificial need for alcohol. With so many companies bombarding us with advertisements linking alcohol and sex together, the message becomes clear. If you want to have sex, you need to drink first. Going to a party or club? Make sure you have a few drinks to boost up your confidence. Inviting someone over to your house? Make sure you have a few drinks together just to break the ice. Have your significant other over? Why not share some wine to make sure you're both loose and relaxed? I mean, how many times have we seen some variation of the film trope where a guy is going to go over and talk to an attractive girl at the bar but needs to polish off his drink first in order to make sure he has enough confidence to not make the encounter utterly disastrous? Baudrillard uses the example of the Watergate scandal and says the very labeling of it as a scandal is done deliberately in order to categorize it as a one-off occurrence and not the reality that is a daily occurrence in the U.S. political system. Effectively, calling it the Watergate scandal restores our faith in the political system in the United States. Similarly, we as a society allow ourselves to believe that alcohol and sex are closely linked. But why? Well, I would argue that it allows us a sort of scapegoat. Just look at this advertisement and the 3 beautiful girls inviting you to drink with them. We are allowed a scapegoat instead of thinking, oh, I don't have girls like that waiting on me because of my personality, because of my looks, because of my confidence, whatever. We are given a gift, something to blame it on, a third party that has nothing to do with us. In this case, the reason I don't have the 3 models serving me is purely because I'm not drinking Devassa.